Welcome to our deep dive. And, this one's all about Albert Einstein. Now, we're not just skimming the surface here. We've got some excerpts from a longer piece about him. And, well, it goes way beyond the typical genius narrative. You know the one. So get ready, because we're going to uncover the layers of Einstein's life that made him truly world-changing. From his early struggles to his incredible breakthroughs and the impact he had on the world, both inside and outside of physics.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about how someone so brilliant could have had a tough time in school. This source actually talks about Einstein as a kid. And, well, it turns out he wasn't exactly a model student. Questioned authority, constantly even got expelled. Imagine that. The guy who revolutionized physics couldn't quite fit into the traditional school system.
Yeah, I know. It really makes you wonder if those rebellious tendencies were actually crucial to his later success. Maybe he needed to think differently to see the universe in a new light.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Mhm.
But in Einstein's case, it was more like the questioning mind gets the groundbreaking theory.
And speaking of groundbreaking theories, let's talk about that patent office miracle. You've probably heard the story. Einstein's working this pretty mundane job reviewing patents, and somehow, amidst all the paperwork, he manages to revolutionize physics. 1905, he publishes not one, not two, but four groundbreaking papers.
And these weren't just any papers. One of them introduced the concept of special relativity. It's almost poetic, don't you think? A seemingly boring job gives Einstein the mental space he needed to make one of the most significant leaps in scientific history. It kind of makes you think. What could you achieve if you carved out more space for unconventional thinking in your own life?
It's a great point. Sometimes a break from routine can be the key to unlocking creativity. But let's face it, special relativity is not exactly light reading. You've probably heard that time and space aren't absolute. But what does that actually mean?
Well, imagine this. You're on a train traveling at a constant speed, and you throw a ball straight up in the air. From your perspective on the train, the ball goes straight up and then straight back down. But to someone standing on the platform watching the train go by, the ball follows a curved path. Both observers are correct, but their perception of the ball's motion is relative to their own frame of reference.
Okay, that makes sense. So, in essence, the way we experience time and space depends on our relative motion. But then things get even more mind-boggling with general relativity, right? That's where gravity comes in.
Yes, Einstein basically said that gravity isn't a force in the traditional sense, but rather a curvature of space-time caused by massive objects. Picture a bowling ball placed on a trampoline. The ball creates a curvature in the trampoline surface. Now imagine that dip represents the curvature of space-time caused by a massive object like the sun.
So the Earth is basically rolling around in that dip created by the sun, and that's what we perceive as gravity. It's like a cosmic bowling alley.
Precisely. And it's not just a theoretical concept. One of the most amazing things about Einstein is that his predictions have been proven again and again through experiments.
Like that famous solar eclipse in 1919, right? That's when scientists actually observed light bending around the sun, just as Einstein's theory predicted.
Exactly. It was a pivotal moment that catapulted him to global fame. The world suddenly had to grapple with this revolutionary new view of the cosmos.
It's incredible to think that one person could have such a profound impact on our understanding of the universe.
But what's even more interesting, and something this source highlights, is that Einstein wasn't always working alone. The lone wolf genius image doesn't quite capture the full picture. Take his collaboration with mathematician Marcel Grossmann, for example. Grossmann's expertise was crucial in developing the mathematical framework for general relativity.
That makes you wonder, even for a genius like Einstein, how important was collaboration? He was a brilliant mind, no doubt. But could he have accomplished all of this in isolation?
It's a fascinating question, and one that really challenges the myth of the solitary genius. Even the greatest minds need the support and insight of others.
You know, one thing I find incredibly relatable about Einstein is that even he struggled with math early on. This source mentions that he even had some tutors who thought he might not amount to much. It's a reminder that everyone faces challenges, even those who go on to achieve extraordinary things.
Absolutely. It humanizes him and shows that even geniuses have weaknesses. It's a powerful message, especially for anyone who might be struggling in their own field.
Now, things get a little more complicated and perhaps a bit uncomfortable when we delve into Einstein's role in the development of the atomic bomb. Here's the ethical dilemma. Einstein, a pacifist at heart, writes to President Roosevelt in 1939, warning him about the potential for Nazi Germany to develop nuclear weapons.
And this letter, intended as a warning, sets in motion a chain of events that leads to the Manhattan Project, and ultimately the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's a tragic example of the unintended consequences of scientific discovery.
Einstein was deeply conflicted about his role in this. He later said that if he had known about the true destructive power of the bomb, he would have become a shoemaker instead.
It raises such important questions about the responsibility of scientists, the ethical considerations that must guide scientific progress.
This source also touches on something really fascinating: Einstein's unique mental approach to solving problems. He was a big believer in the power of visualization, often starting with thought experiments rather than equations.
It's said that he imagined himself chasing after a beam of light, which eventually led to the development of special relativity. It's an incredible example of how creative thinking and imagination can be just as important as raw intellect in scientific breakthroughs.
So here we have Einstein, this brilliant mind, a pacifist grappling with the implications of his own discoveries, and someone who relied on the power of imagination to unlock some of the universe's greatest secrets. We're starting to see a more complex picture of the man behind the iconic image, aren't we?
Absolutely. And as we move forward, we'll continue to peel back these layers, exploring not only his scientific contributions, but also his social and political activism, his personal struggles, and his enduring legacy.
We were just talking about how even Einstein struggled with math sometimes. I mean, this is the guy who redefined gravity, and yet he needed help with some of the complex calculations behind his theories.
It really does challenge that image of the lone genius, doesn't it? It highlights a key aspect of scientific progress that often gets overlooked: collaboration. In Einstein's case, his partnership with mathematician Marcel Grossmann was instrumental. Grossmann's expertise in geometry helped Einstein navigate the complex mathematical terrain of general relativity. It reminds us that even the brightest minds benefit from different perspectives and expertise.
It makes you wonder how many brilliant ideas are out there just waiting for the right collaboration to bring them to life.
Absolutely. And remember, Einstein's ideas weren't immediately embraced by the scientific community. Challenging Newtonian physics, the bedrock of science for centuries, was a bold move. To suggest that space and time were intertwined, relative, and could be warped, well, it took a certain amount of intellectual courage to stand by those convictions.
I remember learning about relativity in school, and my mind was blown. It's such a radical shift from the everyday way we experience the world.
It truly is. And it wasn't just a theoretical concept. The 1919 solar eclipse observation, which proved light bends around the sun, really cemented Einstein's place in history.
Speaking of challenging established norms, Einstein also famously disagreed with certain aspects of quantum mechanics. This source mentions him clinging to determinism. What does that actually mean in this context?
Essentially, determinism is the idea that everything in the universe is predetermined, that cause and effect rule absolutely. So if you knew the initial conditions of the universe, you could theoretically predict everything that would ever happen. Quantum mechanics, however, introduced an element of randomness and probability into the mix. Einstein famously resisted this, saying God does not play dice. He believed there must be some underlying order, some hidden variables we hadn't yet discovered.
So even a genius like Einstein could be resistant to new ideas, especially when they challenge long-held beliefs. It's a good reminder for all of us to stay open-minded, right?
Absolutely. Now, stepping outside the realm of pure science, our source delves into Einstein's personal life and his navigation of the tumultuous political landscape of the early 20th century. World War I deeply affected him. He was a staunch pacifist, a lone voice of dissent against the rising tide of nationalism sweeping through Europe, particularly in his native Germany.
And this commitment to pacifism made his role in the development of the atomic bomb all the more tragic.
His letter to President Roosevelt, warning of potential Nazi nuclear weapons, while intended to prevent catastrophe, indirectly led to the Manhattan Project. It's a heart-wrenching example of good intentions gone awry.
It really highlights the complex ethical dilemmas that scientists face, especially when their discoveries have the potential for both great good and great harm.
Precisely. And the atomic bomb wasn't the only ethical challenge Einstein grappled with. As a Jewish scientist, he was acutely aware of the rising anti-Semitism in Europe. He became a prominent figure in the Zionist movement, advocating for a Jewish homeland. However, he remained critical of nationalism in all its forms, even Zionism.
Interesting, because he was so vocal about the need for a Jewish homeland, and yet he remained wary of the dangers of nationalism. What did he envision for Israel?
Einstein believed in a peaceful coexistence, a state founded on cultural and humanitarian ideals, rather than one built on military power or expansionist ambitions. This vision reflected his broader belief in a world where understanding and compassion transcended political borders and ideological divides.
And that belief extended to his support for civil rights in the United States. He formed a close friendship with W.E.B. Du Bois, and spoke out against racial segregation and discrimination.
It demonstrates a consistency in his moral compass. He saw the fight for equality and justice as a universal struggle, whether it was against anti-Semitism in Europe or racial prejudice in America.
This source also touches on the fact that despite his brilliance and moral convictions, Einstein wasn't immune to personal struggles. He poured so much of himself into his work that his relationships often suffered. And as his views on quantum mechanics diverged from the mainstream, he found himself increasingly isolated within the scientific community.
It's a reminder that even geniuses are human. They experience loneliness, doubt, and the pain of strained relationships.
Even amidst these challenges, though, certain qualities shine through. His unyielding curiosity, his willingness to question dogma, and his playful sense of humor.
Absolutely. Those qualities combined with his intellectual prowess are what made him such a captivating figure.
Remember that quote, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing."
It speaks to that childlike wonder he never lost. He approached the universe with a sense of awe and a desire to understand its deepest mysteries.
And he wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, to question authority, and to pursue his own unique path.
That refusal to accept things at face value allowed him to see beyond the limitations of his time and envision a universe that defied conventional wisdom. But it wasn't all serious contemplation and groundbreaking theories.
There's so many stories about his playful nature, his witty remarks, and his ability to laugh at himself. It humanizes him and makes his achievements all the more remarkable.
Absolutely. That humility, that ability to not take oneself too seriously is perhaps one of his most endearing qualities. It reminds us that even as we strive for greatness, it's important to find joy in the journey and to never lose that sense of wonder.
Okay, as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I'm really curious to explore Einstein's lasting legacy, his impact on science ethics, and the way we imagine the possibilities of the universe.
All right, we're on the final leg of our Einstein deep dive, and it's time to talk legacy. We've covered so much ground already. His unconventional path, his groundbreaking theories, his struggles, his humor. It's almost overwhelming to think about the sheer scope of his impact. Where do we even begin?
It's true. Einstein's influence is kind of woven into the very fabric of modern science and technology, and even our philosophical understanding of the universe.
Yep.
His theories weren't just these abstract ideas. They had tangible, real-world implications.
Yeah, when we talk about relativity, it's easy to get lost in the mind-bending concepts of like warped space-time and time dilation. But those concepts actually have practical applications that affect our lives every day.
Exactly. Think about GPS technology. It relies on incredibly precise timekeeping, taking into account the effects of both special and general relativity. Without Einstein's theories, our GPS systems just wouldn't be nearly as accurate. It's amazing to think that something as commonplace as GPS is built upon these revolutionary ideas about the nature of space and time.
And it goes beyond technology. Einstein's work sparked this wave of philosophical inquiry, forcing us to kind of reconsider fundamental questions about the nature of reality, causality, and even free will. That debate he sparked about determinism versus probability in quantum mechanics continues to this day.
You mentioned earlier that he was searching for a unified field theory later in his life. What was that all about? Was he trying to find like some sort of master key to unlock all the secrets of the universe?
In essence, yes. He was driven by this deep desire to find one single elegant theory that could explain all the forces of nature. Gravity, electromagnetism was the strong and weak nuclear forces. He wanted to show that at a fundamental level, everything was connected, that there was this underlying unity to the seemingly disparate forces that govern the universe.
It's such an ambitious goal, almost like trying to find a universal language for the cosmos. Seems like a fitting pursuit for someone who dedicated his life to understanding the universe.
Absolutely. And even though he didn't achieve a complete unified field theory, his efforts paved the way for later theoretical developments like string theory, which continues to grapple with those fundamental questions. But Einstein's impact extends far beyond the realm of science. He became a symbol of intellectual courage, a reminder that one person's willingness to challenge the status quo can truly change the world.
He's become such an iconic figure, almost larger than life. I remember seeing that famous photo of him with his tongue sticking out as a kid. He seemed like someone who was both brilliant and playful, not afraid to be himself.
Yeah, that image perfectly captures a certain aspect of his appeal. He wasn't just this cold, calculating scientist. He had this disarming charm, this twinkle in his eye that made him relatable and even endearing. He became a pop culture icon, a symbol of genius and nonconformity.
But beyond the iconic image, there's a depth to his legacy that I think resonates deeply with people. This source emphasizes his commitment to social justice, his vocal opposition to war and oppression.
Yeah, Einstein understood that scientific progress without moral responsibility was a dangerous path. He believed that the same intellect used to unravel the mysteries of the universe should also be applied to solving the problems facing humanity.
And he lived by those principles. He spoke out against racism and prejudice. He advocated for peace and nuclear disarmament. He used his platform to champion causes he believed in.
He challenged us to use our knowledge wisely, to consider the ethical implications of our actions, and to strive for a more just and compassionate world. These messages are perhaps even more relevant today than they were during his lifetime.
It feels like he set a high bar not just for scientists, but for all of us. He challenged us to think differently, to never stop questioning, to embrace curiosity as a guiding principle in life.
Remember that wonderful quote, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing."
It's a powerful reminder that learning isn't just about accumulating facts. It's about nurturing a sense of wonder and a desire to understand the world around us.
And it's not just about intellectual curiosity, but also about moral curiosity. To question injustice, to challenge dogma, to be willing to change our minds when presented with new evidence. These are all essential elements of a life well lived.
So here we are at the end of our deep dive. And I have to say, I feel inspired. Einstein's story is a testament to the power of human ingenuity. But it's also a reminder of our responsibility to use that ingenuity wisely.
It's a call to action, an invitation to embrace our own curiosity, to challenge assumptions, to think critically, and to never stop exploring the infinite possibilities of the universe, both within us and around us.
What a journey. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Einstein's extraordinary life and legacy. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive, and we encourage you to continue exploring his ideas, his writings, and his impact on the world. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.